I got an email the other day, but I won't tell you who from. I'll preserve the person's anonymity. The person said, I've been trying to get away from tracking all that stuff going on today in this country. I've seen enough. The group that's doing it will never be held accountable. It's not worth my time to meditate on it for even a minute. It's just the nature of this place these days, and it will always be as long as people think that they are their body, their party, their race, their family, their country. All I can do is do my own dharma as best I can, and follow out my vocation. Beyond that, I will only upset myself over things that I can't change, and it's not going to serve anyone. Okay. I want to use that. The most wonderful gift we have is between these two ears. It's the source of our appreciation of life, as well as the source of our discouragement at times. People often see what they only want to see. People believe what they only want to believe, in spite of what the facts might say otherwise. People sometimes put their life in the hands of a symbol. And they somehow confuse the fact that in striving they have to suffer. So how do you decode their belief systems? How do you get them to give up the sense that somehow they have to be impaired, wounded, or suffering in order to get someplace in life? Very hard. And like the letter I got, the individual finally came to realization, well, there are certain things I just can't change. Can't blame the weather. If it rains on the picnic, won't help, won't change a thing. But we get ourselves all upset, don't we? Well, I think there are certain remedies here that are available. And at first they don't seem to be very effective, and they don't seem particularly attractive, but if you give them a chance, you might get surprised. And again, it goes back to the mind. Now, your mind is not alone in this life. It's in a body. In fact, you are an embodied spirit. You've chosen to be in this three-dimensional format, which grows and declines, grows and declines. Our cells don't last very long. They're constantly growing. Your body's dying and being reborn, so to speak, all the time. There are things that are going to go on in your body that you don't have much control over. But there are many things that you can do in your behavior and your exercises in life that you do have control over, to some extent, sometimes more. Okay. You're all on a path. You have your own preference, the way you want to review it. Some will say, well, I'm a bhakti yogi, or I'm a jnana yogi, or I'm a raja yogi. But I would like to look for a common element in there. And you're really on the path of being an artist, all of you. You are to create your future. Think for a moment. You have no idea what tomorrow's going to be like. You have no idea what next week is going to be like. It could even snow. Much to our displeasure. But the point is, within the space, the parameters of how we live, there's a great deal of liberty. And you have to choose that, how you want to use that liberty. How you want to respond to the situation that can't be particularly improved immediately or maybe in the near future. We don't always like what's going on today in our country, in our city, in our workforce. Okay. And yet, I keep saying that you are meant to be an artist. You are meant to create something. That's an expression of you. You are to recognize how to put the energies together, however modest it may be, however to bring about something that you feel is worthwhile. Because you can't live with yourself unless you do. You're meant to live a noble life. I know that sounds almost strangely corny, but that's true. You can't live without having a sense of nobility. Otherwise your health will suffer terribly. But you have to recognize how to use the tools you have, and that's often forgotten or not sufficiently paid attention to. You have to discern. What's the best way for me to act as a human being in the circumstances of today? In any situation I find myself. At home, at work, at play. That's where I create. That's where I express my humanity, my humaneness. And oftentimes it takes a crisis to find out really what I'm made of. And I hope to see that not too many crises come about. But just what do you do when a crisis comes? What do you ponder? It still means you have to follow your nature, though, because that's all you've got. If you oppose your nature, you try to coerce it, sabotage it, you're going to wind up with a lot of suffering sooner or later. And the strange thing is, we all talk about, well, we got to be disciplined. You know, we got to get things done the right way. Well, discipline simply means following your nature. There's nothing particularly harsh about that. We associate the word, unfortunately, with harshness, but it shouldn't be. Discipline simply means understanding who I am, what I've got, and following it up. You're a body, a mind, and a spirit. What is the order there? What is the reality of those three? And how can I work with them in such a way that I can be proud of my artistic creations? So the remedies for the ills are, again, coming back. Follow your nature. You know, it was interesting when Nikola Tesla, who I submit was probably the greatest scientist of, certainly of electricity, that's ever lived. He's the one that gave us these lights, not Edison. When he was asked to look at the reports, the work of the Manhattan Project when they created the atomic bomb in 1942 in the basement of the University of Chicago Gymnasium, Professor Oppenheimer and the gang, they were very satisfied now. They were convinced they could smash the atom. And he looked at the papers and he concluded, gentlemen, you're right. You will smash the atom, but you'll pay a terrible price. You're going to put a curse on this earth. What do you mean? It's the residue, the poison that was released from all those explosions. And then he said something interesting to them. He said, if you let me, I'll show you how to work with nature. And you'll even get more power. They sent him home, unfortunately. But we feel the consequences. And the point is, you and I can't change what happened in 42. We have to somehow protect ourselves as best we can. But you'll always have the opportunity to work with your nature, to find out what's the harmony here. How can I resonate with my spirit so that I can be the artist, the noble person, in spite of the circumstances? And in that way we discover our potentials. We often don't realize that if we force things, if we coerce things, you won't really make much headway in the mystery of who you are, the hidden regions where some of the treasures reside. So, in recognizing the importance of working with your nature, understanding it, exploring it, testing it, what you're really doing is you're leading yourself to freedom. The freedom that you don't have right now. You only have a little bit. And so you're dissolving the ignorance that's confining you to your suffering, to the limitations that you feel in life, and wonder, why can't I do better? Want to do better? Study yourself. Study how this works. Two things occur up here all the time. You can't shut it down. One, you're constantly getting impressions from the outside world, and you're turning them into ideas, concepts, if you wish, thoughts. Secondly, as you do, there's another part of you that gets a little excited about that. We call that emotion, passion, if you will. And those two walk together as partners, thought and emotion. Your job is to work with them. That's all. Oh, they get sometimes aroused unexpectedly. Whoops, they get away. Okay, bring them back. Can be done. It can be done because you have a power within you that can sort of step outside and examine them. Why did I get upset there? Why did I get so emotional? You have that ability to discern, to penetrate what occurred, Without it, you'd be just bouncing around. So you don't have to constantly repeat or rehearse the past. You can say, whoa, what's going on here? Let's see. And because of that innate ability, it can never be taken from you. You can give new meaning to your actions in the future now. You can determine how you want to respond. Oh boy. A lot of people don't think they can, but they can. All you have to do is teach them how to step back a little bit and say, whoa, wait. Just think about it for a moment. Just ponder. Oh. You don't deny the emotion, you don't deny the harvest of thoughts that you have, but you simply want to say, let's inspect them. Let's do a little introspection for a moment. And find out, which ones do I really want? Which ones do I like? Which ones are helpful? Which ones are useful? Which ones are beneficial? And which ones just trip me? If I do that, this is likely to happen, isn't it? Yeah, well, do you want that to happen? No, well, then why do it? Why think certain thoughts if you know what's likely to happen emotionally? Hey, I'm not trying to indict anyone. I'm just saying this is the way our minds are, And at times you got to step back and say, whoa, could I be enjoying myself more in life? And you don't want to pass any serious judgment or, as I say, indict yourself. No, you just want to say, whoa, wait a minute. Am I tense? Am I getting... Why do I wake up tired in the morning if I'm getting enough sleep? Am I taking things to bed with me that are unsolved? I'm not paying attention to them? If I'm waking up every morning all stuffed and I feel a little grumpy, not me of course, but maybe I should take the neti pot. Really? Wow, the neti pot. Woo! And yet look what happens. I'm just amazed when people tell me, I should put it on a pedestal, that neti pot. It just helps so many people just clear up in the morning. It's just that's what I'm saying. So you understand your nature. You understand to get the flow, clean up the channels here in the face. And then you'll feel better. Gee, I didn't think I could feel so clear. I thought I was just drowning. So again, in attempting to be the artist that we're meant to be, sorry, you all are called to it, there are certain things we want to do as it were to improve the instrument. So we go for a walk. We make the time to take a break and say, leave work. It's not going to run away from me. It'll be right there when I get back. And go for a walk. And just be aware of your environment. Do you ever examine the architecture, the buildings where you live? Do you ever wonder why they were made that way? I mean, just ask yourself questions a little bit. Just basically get your mind off what you used to be doing 5 minutes ago so that you give the mind a break. You come back a little calmer, more restored, ready to hit the wheel again. So you experiment with yourself. What do I need in my life to cruise? Aristotle defined happiness in a very interesting way. He said it's a life that flourishes. Ooh, now you fill that in. How can you flourish more? He wasn't talking about riches. He was talking about your energy, your attitude, the way you respond. Do you flourish? And can people sense that in you? You say you want to help others. You're willing to sometimes put yourself behind to give a break to this person. Some spiritual paths call it service, don't they? Seva. But again, there's a little challenge here. Because to really perform service well, you have to discern what's the best way. You don't want to be a busybody to somebody. You don't want to just simply impose yourself because you feel you got to do service. Because now you're just satisfying yourself, not the person. Even being nice is not a substitute for discernment. I know you all watched that marvelous program, The Dog Whisperer. One of the problems Caesar runs into when he comes to help rehabilitate the dog is the owner. The owner thinks that by lavishing a lot of attention on the dog, giving it treats, this is how we can get the dog to do what it wants. The dog just runs wild and just keeps saying more, more, more. Why? Because the owner is satisfying themselves and not trying to recognize the nature of the dog. So again, it goes back to discerning the realities that you're dealing with. People, situations, people at work that are or have a little tension with them. Try to understand them, maybe, or understand the situation. Are you leaving out something? Are you performing something that I didn't see what I was doing here? Just step back. The power of discernment is broader than the occasion upon which you use it. It can see almost around corners at times. Give it a chance. Swami used to say, you are a nucleus, and the universe is your expansion. Woo! That's a consciousness, That's meant to be an awareness. It's a cognitive situation. It's knowledge. It's learning to be in contact with reality and staying in harmony with it. Then things will flourish. Then happiness issues. The first time he made the following statement, he stunned me. He said, most people can't be happy because they don't train themselves for happiness. I'd never associated those two words together. Have you? Train for happiness? We somehow think it's just going to happen, like, trees ripen in the spring and the apples fall off. He said, no, it doesn't happen that way. You have to train for happiness. Now I started to pay attention in that lecture. And he brought it all back to understanding yourself. How can you take the powers you have, your cognitive powers, your emotional powers, your physical powers, how do you express them? How do you bring them into action? How do you engage them with life? Do you know what you're doing? Can you have a reasonable expectation? If you do this, this is likely to happen. So that's how you train for happiness. You must recognize you are at the center of all that. Happiness is not the responsibility of your spouse or your mother-in-law. It's yours. And that means it's self-training. People sometimes used to ask Swamiji, oh, Swamiji, enlighten me, please, touch me, Shaktipat and all this. You just look at him. If I ever touch you, you'd explode. No preparation. No self-training. What do you really think is going to happen? May I ask you for a moment? What do you think is going to happen if you suddenly could become enlightened? Just think for a moment now. What do you think is going to happen in you? Biologically, emotionally, intellectually? Think for a moment. What does that mean? In the body. I remember him saying there's a holistic preparation that must be there so that it takes and stays, so that you can hold it. Because you're going to see with such clarity, such discernment, you're going to feel such vitality. And it goes on and on. He went one day, and then he pulled back. He said, that's enough. And so we are preparing that. The more we can begin to realize we are the artist of our life. We make things happen by our actions or our omissions. And we just have to see what's going on as best we can. The beauty of intelligence, unlike something material, the more you use the matter, the more it breaks down, loses its strength. Not so with human spirit. The more you engage yourself intelligently, calmly, the stronger you get. The less likely you are to fly off the handle when the crisis comes. And they will. You know that. Unexpectedly, but they'll come. There is a kind of, how can I say it, an enrichment of your being as you begin to work with yourself and sense what's going on to you, inside you. How your thinking changes as you calm down. How your walk, your whole demeanor begins to alter itself in conjunction with working on yourself. You will see life differently, not because life has changed. Something else has changed. It's like the teenagers who, when they finally have their first child, they realize, gee, my parents have really grown wisdom over these past few years, you know? Keep it simple. Don't rush. Don't try to make the Enlightenment Olympic team the first month. Grow into it. We do that in our tradition. We could hit you early, but like Paul of Tarsus, you know what happened to him when he fell off the donkey? Huh? He couldn't handle it. We want you to open it up, walk into it like a bright sunrise, and just be astonished. Peaceful, no friction, just awe. That's the way he wants to bring the students along. You are in a tradition, remember. This is not a beginner's tradition. This is a finisher's tradition. You're on the last leg. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. I'm serious. I'm not pulling your leg. You are meant to be finishers this life. They will do half for you. And they'll do the bigger half. Because they know what we're up against. Swamiji said one day, he says, you have a harder life than I did when I grew up. And he'll factor that in and give you more help as a result. He said, you've chosen the greatest vocation, to be in the world and yet remain above. You haven't taken refuge in a cave. He says he didn't have much respect for many of the yogis that did that. He didn't think they were helping humanity enough. But you are. By being the person, you are. At work, at play, at family. So you have embraced the highest vocation. And the enjoyment is to find out what that's all about. You are a work in progress. You're flying as you're building the airplane. That's part of the fun. If you would have told me years ago I'd wind up being what I am today, I said, you're nuts. No way. Things just happen, don't they? And you make choices. Whoa, something else happens. It's like opening up a present somebody gives you. You don't know what's in there. And there it is. Touches you. That's the way you're meant to be towards people. You're meant to be a surprise to others at times. By the way you act, what you say, a gesture. And it's so delightful to catch people off guard that way. And you can feel the affection coming towards you, too. You should. It's important, that kind of communication. Swami used to say, all life is nothing but relationships. So we've got to build them. We've got to foster them. We've got to preserve them. We've got to mend them. And they go on and on. You're built for being around a long time. Not necessarily in this body, but a long time. That's what immortality is all about. So, like what I read at the beginning, we don't always like the stuff, what's going on today in our environment, our government, our schools, or what have you. But we're not going to let that hold us back from being the kind of person we want to be. Don't ever condemn yourself, regardless of what has taken place in the past. All the mistakes, the flounderings, the betrayals even. Yeah, let it go. You're still intact. Your powers are here. No one can steal them. No one. Just use them. Use them the way you see what the truth is saying to you at this moment. You've got something in you. It's something so beautiful. It's called conscience. That's a hidden power that speaks to you. Listen to it. It shouldn't speak harshly. If it's harsh, there's got to take a look at it. But you should just say, hey, why not? At times you'll be called to extend yourself. At times you'll have to realize, oh, I got to stay out of this. It's not for me. Fine. Your freedom will continue to blossom as you follow your nature and recognize that in this book of life, you are the author. You might cite other people, but you are the author. And you just have to keep writing those chapters. Keep writing those chapters. And as we see you, we see where you are in the book of life. Huh? So, we all have the same vocation, ultimately, to build a community in which we can share, respect, and help each other when we can. I don't always have to like what you do, but I can always be kind. I can always walk away if it's not for me, but I can always be kind, even if you're not. Don't forget that. Kindness goes a long way. Just being kind. There is a wise person in you. All you have to do is speak to that person. Sit down quietly. Ask this remarkable mind. If you're stuck, things aren't working out, and you just don't know why, you've tried, but you just don't, just ask and listen. It'll come forth. The other night, someone told me a story. She wanted something, one of our students. She wanted to take a certain training training course. She didn't know where to go. She didn't know how. She was getting a little discouraged. She went to bed, she told me, and Swami Rama appeared to her. And just smiled at her, as if to say, don't worry, just wait. The next day she woke up, in the mail, out of nowhere, came the application for the very thing she wanted to take. What a coincidence, huh? It's like the Irishman Murphy who was walking down the street. No, he was driving, excuse me, and he had to get to this meeting. He was a little late, and he couldn't find a parking spot. Oh, he was on the verge of tears trying to find his parking spot. He looked up, Lord, help me. Find a parking spot for me, and I promise I'll go to Mass every Sunday, and I'll give up my Irish whiskey. And just then he's found an open spot. Never mind, I found one. Gang, we're in it together. We help each other. Be kind, huh? So let's meditate.